Hi everybody, it's Jane Green from PD Training. Look, I really want to talk to you about parenting today, and in particular those who have perhaps had made a lot of mistakes when you were bringing up your children. I made mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're not given a handbook on how to actually raise our children. And often our children will suffer from some of the decisions we make, the partners we might choose that may not be the correct partner. Or maybe we go through a stage in life where maybe, we start to feel like unhappy in our lives over our relationship with their father, and there might be a few quarrels, etc. And also sometimes, some of us may actually perhaps go out a little bit too much and forget that the kids need more attention. I mean, there's a whole variety of things. You might get into a domestic violent relationship and get out of it. I hope you have, if you were in one. And, not put your children through that. However, if you've made some of these mistakes, it's very, very important to be able to say sorry to your children. And, it's not just saying sorry, it's saying sorry without making excuses. Because what children will do, and of course, we do have excuses sometimes in life while we make mistakes. We are a product of our own upbringing. We're a product of how we were brought up. So we're going to sometimes do the things our parents did. For example, I remember my mother, bless her heart, my mother was a wonderful mother, burning my comics, okay? And she burnt the comics, and I'll never forget how upset I was with her. And I remember repeating that same action when I was really furious with my son at the time that wasn't doing the right thing, and he was 15 years old, and I took all these wonderful comics that had been given to him by his stepfather and I burnt them just like my mother had done. And it's something I regret so much, because he used to draw, and he was such a fantastic drawer, and he used to take everything out of these comics and draw, those really amazing characters that people draw, like artists draw in the comics. To this day, I swear to God, I so regret that I did that to him. But, it was just like a reaction that I had from my mother doing the same thing to me. And, it's very, very important, if you are a parent of young children now, to remember to look back at how your parents did things, and you will find that you do things a similar way. And sometimes it's better to look at whether your way is right, whether your parents' way was right, and whether you need to either change it or improve it. And so it's really important if you've made these mistakes. Teenagers, they grow up, and quite frankly, what I've found is teenagers also skew up information. They kind of can't remember the exact details, because, for example, you might say, okay, you're not doing anything with your life, get out, right? Get out, go. But then you run and you might ring up the friend, and that they're going to go. Then you say, can you just keep him for a week, because I just want him to learn a lesson. And then you cry in their jammies, oh my God, and you would never leave them out in the street, right? You would never do that. They've got somewhere to go, okay, for example. However, that child may not have realised that, and will hold that against you forever, okay? When really, sometimes that's tough love. But of course, most of us would never ever throw our child out to be harmed on the street. So let's say that did happen, and you've chucked your child out, at 16, and said, get out, you're not going to work, you're not going to school, well, then you better get out. But then, you know that where they're going to go to their friend's parents' place, and then you ring up because you're friends, and you say, can you just keep them for a week? I'll pay for the food and everything, and just look after them for a week. I just want to teach the person a lesson. And then you bawl your eyes out in the pajamas, holding them. Oh my God, what have I done? I miss him so much. And that if that child walks in 24 hours and says, please let me back in, you would let them back in, okay? And you wouldn't see them on the streets in danger. But for a child, they grow up and they don't, I guess parents may not explain all the details. And so sometimes they've got skewed ways of knowing about that event. They don't actually know exactly what happened. And this can be carried on then on for many, many years, they could grow up to be 35, 40-year-old adults and still thinking, you know, my mother kicked me out at 15 and 16 and just would have left me on the street. How wrong is that? Very important that you take the time to put pen to paper and just explain those things that perhaps haven't been clarified if you've got a problematic thing with a child. But first and foremost, the best thing to do is say, I am sorry. I am sincerely sorry for stuffing up. I'm really sincerely sorry for that time when I did this. I'm really sincerely sorry that I, you know, maybe didn't choose the right partner the second time or the third time around, or, you know, or the first time around. You know, I'm sorry if that impacted on you, and I want you to know how deeply sorry I am. And, you know, don't say sorry if you're just sort of saying it for the sake of sorry. Okay, because children can tell, and teenagers and adults can tell that you are, you know, faking it. And there's no good saying to someone, and a child saying, I'm sorry, but, you know, I came from a bad background. They don't want to hear that. You can tell them later on in life, once they're healed, and you can say to them, look, I came from this and that, and this is what happened to me. You know, and I often find, I don't know whether it's sons or it could also go to daughters, but I've found that it's harder to kind of communicate sometimes with a son than it is with a daughter, because often, you know, trying to get that message across, sometimes boys don't want to hear the emotional stuff from their parents, and that's a bit unfortunate because that closes up the communication. And sometimes you might have to wait till they're way older. But, you know, I remember going to my son when he was about 17 or 18 and apologising. And I remember crying and saying, you know, I'm so sorry for these mistakes. And I pointed out the mistakes. And, you know, that was the time that our relationship changed. You know, he actually gave himself for me to give him some help and to guide him more so in life. So I believe it's 150% very important to apologise to your children for your mistakes. And then, you know, yes, don't make excuses. They don't want to hear, but I was. It'll be like I hear she's saying sorry, but now she's excusing herself. No good. Okay, that's one lesson I learned. And then over the years, you know, show them you love them. Do the things that perhaps, you know, will prove to them you love them. Stay in touch. Ask them how they are. Respect that they have to make their own decisions as adults, and, you know, they may not sometimes want to talk to you to sort it out, you know, and you have to step back. And, you know, it's no good still expecting them to live your life. They have to live their life, and you can still be there like a guiding angel rather than someone who's dictating and telling them, you know, what's best for them. And I also want to say that parents, I think, carry so much guilt around, and the guilt goes on for years and years and years and years. And there is a time where if you've made your sorry and you really meant it and you are deeply regretful, then it's also a time for your kids to kind of forgive you, okay? And if they don't, then you have to move on and forgive yourself, because we all make mistakes. And look, some people's mistakes are worse than others, okay? But you still are human. And as long as you have self-reflected and you've made changes and you've become a better parent, better grandparent, better at, you know, being loving and showing that there's change and that, you know, you're not going to make those same mistakes again, and that you do love them absolutely. And not good enough just, guys, it's not good enough to just say I love you. Okay, we can all say that. That's easy. It's the doing, it's the actions, it's the caring. And, you know, I think, you know, for the mistakes I've made in life, I've made it up 1,000-fold, not just by saying sorry, by being good, really being a fabulous grandmother and being a fabulous mum, you know. But you do feel guilty, and, you know, even there might be only one small portion of your life that you got off the rails a bit and went and, you know, maybe chose the wrong partner or whatever. But, you know, you as a mother and as a parent and a father, you tend to kind of take it all on, oh God, you know, God, why did I do that? I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. And there does come a time where you really have to forgive yourself. You can't carry that burden of guilt forever, okay? And I think it's important then, you know, once you've done all the sorries and that, gradually, as you've made the relationship, try to talk and just say, look, you know, in loving conversations, when the time's right, you know, this is why I made, you know, this is what actually happened. Now, if you've got a non-communicative kind of child who doesn't want, I don't want to talk about that, you know, too emotional, mum, shush. Okay, it becomes very hard to explain some of those incidents that happen, like the comic thing. You know, I couldn't actually say to my son, you know, my mum did that to me and, you know, I shouldn't have done it to you. But I'm actually hoping if he sees this video, he'll realise that I'm actually really deeply sorry I did that, because he was such a brilliant artist and I was just following my parents' pattern, you know. And that's something we really need to look out for, that we're not following these patterns of our parents that might have been destructive in our own lives. And this, you need to forgive yourself. And I think children also, you know, especially mature people getting into their 30s, you know, and starting to get into their 40s. I mean, it's time to kind of say, okay, parents made some bad mistakes, okay, but look at who they are now and look at what they've done now. And you have to move on, because as long as you hold that stuff against your parents, you're not letting go of all the baggage, you know. And having baggage like that's not good for your soul, and it's not good for your mental health and your emotional health, because your thinking patterns that have been formed continue in schemers, and they keep on. You keep on making the same mistakes and producing the same patterns of behaviour yourself, because you haven't let go. And it's very, very important to move on, because once you see your parent more as someone who was not given a handbook, who probably came from dysfunction themselves, or there were certain things in their lives that happened to them that has killed their self-confidence, that has made them perhaps follow, you know, they never felt complete unless they were with a man to make them feel complete, say if you're a woman, and maybe even letting a man have the say in everything, or a woman, it works both ways, and maybe reacting in relationships the way you did because of the way that you were brought up. I mean, our parents are also, you know, from backgrounds, and we need to understand what, you know, what happened to them. And some of you probably do know some things that happened to your parents and have shaped them as parents. So I hope this video has helped you, and I hope that you follow some of those tips. And look, if you have got a dysfunctional relationship with a child, trust me, that apology and then showing in actions that you have made changes and showing love and caring, it'll dissolve that relationship from a dysfunctional relationship to a loving and close one that I'm sure you would like to have with your child. Because as parents, we never stop loving our kids, and we can make 1,000 mistakes. We never stop loving those children. It's something to do with the blood ties. Sadly, and very sadly, some people, and I think it's very few people, don't have that same maternal feeling and would rather take drugs and rather keep on being in domestic violent relationships, not getting out and allowing their kids to suffer. And that is, to me, really very sad, because if you're in a domestic violent relationship and your children are seeing that, whether they're being hit or not, and you're being hit and they're screaming and yelling, I can guarantee that later on in your life, you will have a very dysfunctional life with your child. Not to mention that they will become dysfunctional if you stay, but also that you and those children will have a very dysfunctional relationship, because they will blame you and they will say, why did you put me through that? Okay, so if you are right now in a dysfunctional relationship like that, then you need to stop and you need to think about your children, because your children come first. They always come first before anybody. But if it's the past and you've learnt from that and you've moved on and you're not in a domestic violent relationship, well then take the steps I've said and try and heal that relationship with your child. Because I can tell you now, and this is something what I always think about, you know, your brothers and sisters are there, but they've got their own families. Your parents are old and they've got their own lives, and they're more dependent on you than you are on them. The true people who are your family, they're your children. The children are the ones, and then the grandchildren. And that's what I've found in my life. The people who do the most for me are my kids. The people that do most for me, my beautiful daughter okay? I mean, if I didn't have her, and I didn't have her partner in my life, who's also a wonderful man, and I didn't have those 5 grandchildren, I would not feel so contented and so happy. And I don't have a partner, okay? But I have all the love in the world, and that is from those 5 grandchildren and that daughter and my son-in-law.